Hello there, and welcome to episode 21 of the Or So She Says podcast, where we break down all things fitness, nutrition, mindset, yoga, meditation, and energy healing in a way that actually makes sense and gives you a bit of a laugh along the way, because humor is the oil of life's engine and laughter is the language of the soul. So if this is your first time here, my name is Narissa Shea. I am a personal trainer, nutritionist, sport and exercise psychology consultant, a yoga instructor, a Reiki practitioner, and I used to be a professional Irish dancer. So I do apologize in advance today. There's probably going to be a lot of sniffling and possible sneezing. I am doused in a cold, but I really wanted to get this recorded. I wanted to record it last week and life just got wild. So today we are tackling one of the biggest misconceptions in the weight loss world. Why focusing on the number of the scale is actually probably doing you more harm than good, okay? And this is going to be the truth about fat loss versus weight loss, which I literally deal with every single week, or whenever I'm dealing with a new client or taking on a new client. This is usually the first thing we need to tackle. So if you've ever felt frustrated because your weight didn't drop, even though maybe you were eating well, you were working out, and you were actually feeling great, then this episode is for you. We are going to talk about the real difference between weight loss and fat loss, why weighing yourself too often is probably killing your motivation, how slimming clubs and weigh-ins can actually set you up for failure, and what to track instead for real lasting progress. Now, if you want to go even deeper into understanding fat loss, like all things fat loss, I urge you to go out and check episode 4 of my podcast. It's literally called Fat Loss 101, where I cover every single thing you need to know in order to drop a dress size, a few dress sizes, if that is your goal, of course. To be honest, the title of the podcast should really have just been called Health 101, but very less catchy. So I said Fat Loss 101. And I will link it in the description below. But that one goes really into detail of actually how to achieve sustainable fat loss. Whereas this episode today is more just focusing on understanding the difference between weight loss and fat loss, okay? So with that, we're going to jump straight into the key differences. So what most people get wrong is when they say they want to lose weight, what they actually mean is they want to lose fat, okay? Body fat. But the problem is weight loss includes everything, okay? So that's fat, muscle, water, food in your digestive system. It's all lumped into this one number on the scale. And I always say to people, when we keep going through things and check-ins, I'm like, okay, well, do you want to weigh a certain amount, or do you want to look a certain way and feel a certain way? Because you could drop a lot of weight on the scales and feel like shit and actually not really look that different. For example, maybe you went on a night out last night, or maybe not last night, but one of the nights, and you didn't have your dinner and you drank a load of vodka and you got on the scales the next day and you were like half a stone down, okay? That is not fat loss. And like, you normally know what happens the day after that, it goes back up and then sometimes goes up even further, okay? So when I say to people, how really attached are you to your gravitational force on this earth? Like, is that really your goal? Or do you want to look a certain way? Because most of the time people are like, oh no, well actually, I want to drop 2 dress sizes. And I'm like, okay, let's focus on that. Because that is more tangible. That is something we can focus on, that we have a little bit more control over, okay? You have very little control over what that scale is going to say on any given day, okay? So like, what is weight loss? Weight loss is just a reduction in total body weight. So as I said, this could come from water loss. And a perfect example of this is people who go fucking keto. And they're like, I've dropped 7 pounds in a week, right? Because I cut out carbs. Now, full disclosure here, I did do keto twice. And I did drop 7 pounds. And before I knew anything about the difference between weight loss and fat loss, I thought I was great. And then the minute I started eating carbs again, it just went back up. Why is this? I go into more detail about this in the fat loss episode, but to keep it very simply, 1 gram of carbohydrates holds on to 3 grams of water. That's not fat. But if you cut carbs from your diet, you are going to drop a shit ton of water weight very quickly. This is why literally people shit on bread all the time, because they eat a lot of bread and they notice the scales goes up. That's not necessarily fat gain, okay? A lot of the time the carbs are actually just holding on to more water, okay? And actually, if you understand what a calorie deficit is, what a calorie surplus is, and what maintenance is, which is what I talk about in that episode, then you will actually realize it's not the bread causing the fat gain, it's that you're more than likely in a calorie surplus, okay? Now, the other thing that happens with weight loss, and I see this all the time with certain slimming clubs and stuff like that, is they actually experience muscle loss as well, okay? If you're in a calorie deficit and you're not really eating enough protein, you're not doing any weight training, and you're actually just in a calorie deficit, you are more than likely losing muscle mass as well, which is what we do not want. If you are a woman in particular listening to this, my God, you need to try and build and maintain as much muscle mass as possible. And this is vitally important for women over 35, okay? Because the amount of muscle mass you have in your body is directly correlated with overall health. Like, that literally says it in a nutshell. So if you're just losing weight, but you're also losing a load of muscle, that's actually doing you a disservice. So how do we maintain muscle mass? We make sure we're eating enough protein and we're incorporating some resistance training into our exercise, okay? So the actual goal then is fat loss. And yes, some fat loss will occur when you're dropping weight if you were in a calorie deficit. But along with that, we need to remember weight loss is also including that water loss and muscle loss, okay? Water loss doesn't really matter, and muscle loss is actually not a good thing, okay? So what is fat loss then? So fat loss is a reduction in body fat percentage, which changes how you look, feel, and perform. So this is a very good visual if you can get this into your head, okay? Two people can weigh the exact same amount but look totally different depending on their body fat percentage. So I love Googling this. You should just literally Google women who are the same weight but look different. Or if you're a man, listening to this, you can do the same. It is crazy. So you could have someone who is 60 kilos with 20% body fat and they look absolutely fucking shredded, right? And then you have someone who's 60 kilos with 35 to 40% body fat and they look completely different. They're a lot softer and less defined, whereas the other person, they look more toned and more lean. So what I always say to people is that not really what you want? Because they weigh the same, but they look totally different, okay? So two people can weigh the exact same, but look completely different based on muscle to fat ratio. And again, what is another benefit of having more muscle in our body? It equates to better overall health. And I don't know about you, but I want to be able to wipe my own fucking arse when I'm 80 years old. So I want to try and build and maintain as much muscle mass as possible, okay? So why does this actually matter? If you lose weight, but most of it comes from muscle, you'll end up weaker, more tired, and essentially with a slower metabolism. Now, people jump on the metabolism bandwagon. They're like, I'm older and my metabolism is just shit. No, chances are you've actually just had a decline in muscle mass and you're also a lot less active than you used to be. Now, again, I'm not going to go into huge detail about metabolism, but in a nutshell, it's very much correlated with how much muscle mass you have in your body. And a very good example of this is I weighed the same amount at 2 points in my life. At one time, I was fucking starving myself and I was eating literally chicken and broccoli, and all I was doing was cardio. And then there was another time in my life where I was eating a lot more food. I was high protein diet. I was weight training 3 to 4 times a week. And I was able to eat a lot more food and not gain weight because I had more muscle in my body. Now, I weighed around the same, but I looked totally different. Like, I was absolutely shredded Krugered in the second instance. And that was down to my lifestyle around that, okay? But if you actually looked at me on the scales, I was the same weight on the scales, but I actually looked totally different. I also, more importantly, felt totally different. I felt like absolute crap and I was getting sick all of the time. In the first instance, when I just weighed less, but I actually was just eating less and doing more cardio and killing myself. Whereas when I actually was weight training and just being active and eating high protein and high fiber and stuff like that, I actually just had so much more muscle definition. Like I had shredded abs and I was able to eat a lot more without gaining weight because I had more muscle mass in my body, okay? Like the way you would approach weight loss is, okay, I just need a calorie deficit, okay? Don't understand what a calorie deficit is? Listen to episode 4. But with fat loss, we aim for more of a slight calorie deficit. We want a high protein diet, high fiber, and incorporating resistance training. And my God, can I tell you, this is not only more enjoyable, but it is a hell of a lot more sustainable, okay? Because like I always say to people, this is actually why the scale is hurting your progress, because it actually completely messes with your head. So your body weight can fluctuate by 2 to 5 pounds in a single day, okay? Just based on water retention, hormones, stress, and even how much food is still in your digestive system. So if you weighed yourself in the morning and then again at night, you might freak out over a gain, which baffles me why these slimming clubs have like things on at night. I've had clients come to me who were at slimming clubs before and they literally were like, I wouldn't eat anything all day because I had my weigh-in at night. Like, so I'd literally just have water and salad all day. So my weight would be down for my weigh-in the evening. I was like, it's just bizarre. Like, and I have a whole episode where I talk about slimming clubs, and I actually had a guest on who had a very, actually quite traumatizing experience with a slimming club. And I will link that below as well. I think it's episode 15. But the other thing to remember as well is like if you're a woman and you're going through a menstrual cycle, like I know for a fact that I'm about 2 kilos heavier just before I get my period, and then I get my period and it'll go back down. So like you can't really measure your progress if other factors that you have no control over are actually having a huge impact on what that number is saying. Like there is genuine psychological damage being done with people having an obsession over the scale. So you see the number go up, and even when progress is happening, it makes people panic and they think what they're doing isn't working. And this then leads to unhealthy behaviors like over restricting food or doing excess cardio and like killing yourself. Like this used to be me, so I completely understand if you're on this train how it feels. And the diet always starts Monday because you can't keep it up. So it turns into that binge restrict cycle where you're restricting yourself all week and then you're binging all weekend because you can't keep it up, and then the diet starts again Monday and you're just in this vicious cycle feeling like you're never getting anywhere. And this usually causes people to quit because even though they're actually making progress, they don't think they're making any progress. So they just fuck the baby out with the bathwater and say, fuck it, it's not working, like, and blame their metabolism usually. And like this is kind of the problem with slimming clubs or things that have like weekly weigh-ins. Like many slimming clubs only focus on the scale as a measure of success. Now, not all of them, and I have to say, I think some of them have changed in recent years. I don't know, I haven't gone to one. But the thing about it is like you could be losing water weight from cutting carbs or sweating a lot. That doesn't actually mean you're healthier or leaner. And a lot of these clubs, they don't teach sustainable fat loss. Like they're like points and sins and all this stuff. And I'm like, if you actually just educated people on the fundamentals of nutrition, which I do in great detail in an upcoming course I have that I'm going to be launching, I go into full detail about like nutrition 101 and what people need to know. And the reason why I find education is so important is because it is the only thing that freed me from that binge restrict cycle, is when I understood the fundamentals of training and nutrition. So what I did in this course was I literally took everything I thought was important from my nutrition course, everything I thought was important from my PT course, and everything I thought was important from my sport and exercise psychology degree with regards to mindset, and put it into lectures, because I was like, this is actually what's important, because now I understand all this. If I ever gain weight, lose it, whatever, I don't freak out anymore because I completely understand the mechanisms behind it all. So, like, have you ever heard someone say, "Oh, I lost 4 pounds this week and then I gained it back"? Like, a lot of the time, people freak out on holidays because they're like, "Oh my God, I've gained like a stone." I was like, if you actually just went back to eating normal for like a couple of days, got back out walking, up the fruit and veg, up the protein, it's not that disastrous at all, okay? So, to be a bit more proactive on this side of the podcast, what should you track instead? Okay, so if not the scale, what are we going to use? So, what I like to use is body measurements. Okay, so you can use waist, hips, thighs, arms, and measure these consistently. Okay, and like try and do them at the same time every week. I have a video on my Instagram somewhere saying how to effectively measure fat loss, where I actually go into detail of exactly what to measure, but to keep things simple, okay? If your waist is shrinking but the scale isn't moving, chances are you are losing fat and you're actually keeping muscle, which is fantastic, okay? Waist measurement is a more accurate indicator of overall fat loss compared to the weighing scales for several reasons, okay? Firstly, we've already mentioned fat loss versus weight loss. The scale measures total body weight, which includes fat, muscle, water, and other tissues. Waist measurement specifically reflects fat loss, particularly visceral fat, which is fat stored around the internal organs, which is more closely linked to health risks, okay? Again, muscle versus fat difference. If you're exercising, especially strength training, like you might be gaining muscle while losing fat. And it's very important to realize that muscle is denser than fat, meaning you can get leaner without the scale actually dropping. So what I mean by that is a really good example of this is if I have 5 pounds of fat here and I have 5 pounds of muscle here, they weigh the same, but one is smaller than the other, okay? The other thing is waist circumference is actually strongly correlated with health risks such as heart disease, diabetes, and metabolic disorders. So a slightly smaller waist can indicate a reduction in harmful visceral fat, whereas lower body weight alone doesn't actually necessarily mean improved health. And a lot of the time when you're doing it in a drastic way, it really, really doesn't. So I've already mentioned water retention and daily fluctuations. Think back to that idea of the night out. I think that is a very, very good example of how the scale can be very, very misleading with regards to water weight, okay? And waist measurement is less affected by these fluctuations and provides a consistent measure of fat loss progress. Because measuring your waist over time provides visible evidence of fat loss, which can be a better motivator, okay? Now, what I will say here, and I'm not going to go into too much detail again, is waist measurement can fluctuate a little bit as well, depending on your time of the month. I think anyone who's ever been bloated or due their period can attest to the fact that everything feels a little bit tighter before you get your period. So what I would tell people to do is you need to stick to things to a couple of months. You can't be like, I did this for a month and it didn't work, okay? You need to be comparing your results from week 1 of month 1 of your cycle to week 1 of month 2. Week 2 of month 1 to week 2 of month 2. Week 3 of month 1 to week 3 of month 2. And week 4 of month 1 to week 4 of month 2. And so on and so forth. And you will get more accurate results, okay? So the best thing I like to use, because I'm like, my God, like when people tell me, oh my God, my uniform doesn't even fit me anymore. And I'm like, well, then there you go. And then you know what you're doing is working. Like how your clothes are fitting. Your jeans are getting a little bit looser. Dresses are zipping up a little bit easier. Like that's fantastic as a measure of progress. Like that is progress, okay? Progress photos is another thing. I've had clients who don't want to do measurements. They don't want to do scale weight. All they want to do is progress photos. And that tells you a lot more as well. Now, usually I would say comparing them every 4 weeks, again, is probably going to give you a little bit more of an accurate representation as opposed to every single week. And it can be good because it's very hard to notice differences in ourselves when we see each other every day. Well, we see ourselves every day. It's like, I don't notice the difference, but someone hasn't seen you for 6 weeks and they're like, oh my God, you look amazing. And you're like, oh, thank you. The other thing I like to use is ones that aren't always very much linked to how you're looking, because these are also important. Like, how are your energy levels? Are you waking up feeling better, like less sluggish in the afternoon, more energy to work out? Like, all of these are signs of progress. Strength and performance, like are you lifting heavier, running longer, improving your endurance, you're getting fitter, not just lighter, okay? The only people that should be really worrying about their actual weight are like boxers and jockeys or people who need to be lifted in their jobs, things like that. Like they're actually the only ones who should be really worried about what their gravitational force on this earth is. The other thing is mood and stress levels, like less anxiety, better sleep, feeling more in control of your habits. Like that is much more important than numbers on a scale. And the other one is increased confidence and a higher sex drive. Like, are you feeling stronger, more capable, more comfortable in your own skin? Like, that is true progress. So try going a month without weighing yourself and track these instead. And I promise you'll start to feel way more in tune with your body and way less stressed about that number on the scale. So just to recap what we went through today, weight loss, fat loss, clearly my coffee is wearing off, and weight loss are not the same thing. The scale fluctuates daily, it fluctuates weekly, and it fluctuates monthly, and this is not a true measure of your progress. Slimming clubs and quick fixes focus on weight, not real fat loss, okay? So you're way better off focusing on the things I mentioned above. And progress is about feeling better, looking better, and performing better, not just weighing less, okay? So if you found this episode quite eye-opening, imagine having a step-by-step plan to actually build a leaner, stronger body without the scale dictating your success. So that is exactly what I have coming up in an upcoming course that I'm going to be launching. I'll be talking a lot more about this over the coming weeks, but we go deep diving into all things fat loss, all things training, mindset. We have a little bit of energy stuff, yoga, meditation. It's really cool. I'm really, really excited. It's basically an amalgamation of like all of the courses that I've spent probably about 12 grand on over the years. It's like an amalgamation of all of them into one cool, fun little course. So stay tuned for details on that. And if you liked this episode and it resonated with you, please do me a massive favor. Please screenshot it, share it on Instagram, tag me Radiantly Empowered. I would love to hear your biggest takeaway. And if you can, please subscribe to the show, hit that follow button. If you're on Apple Podcasts, you can give us a little rating or a review. If you're on Spotify, you can give us a couple of stars. And don't forget to share this with your friends, with your family, with your fellow members in a slimming club if you're in there. And do not forget to listen to episode 4, Fat Loss 101, if you want to dive deep into this topic, because that one is literally one of my most popular episodes. So until next time, you beautiful people, keep focusing on your progress, not just your weight, and have a fantastic week.